Welcome everyone. Welcome to the new session of Software World with Can Dost. And this is the place where I invite people to talk about different topics in the software world. And I'm Can Dost, your host. Today we will talk about cross-cultural communication and its challenges in the engineering teams. It's not specifically engineering teams, but we have the experience with engineering teams, so that's what we are going to talk about. My guest is Felipe, and welcome, Felipe. I'm glad that you are here with us today. How are you?
Hi, Jandos. I'm glad. Thanks for the invitation. I'm pretty good.
It's nice. So, Felipe versus an engineering manager at Jimdo. And Felipe, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
So I'm Felipe, originally from Brazil. I'm working with IT for more than 15 years, so it's a long journey. Managing teams for more than 7 years, and it's pretty nice to see how challenging it is to come to a different country like Germany and to be able to manage different cultures. And I think it's a very nice topic that we're gonna discuss right now.
Yeah, this is like, I remember when I first moved to Germany, it was like a totally different experience. And over the years, I like returned to the place where I moved to Germany, and I asked, like, I think, okay, that was the place that I didn't realize even the cultural differences. So it was always like I don't know. The culture is generally the invisible boundaries, like that's dividing our world. So how was your experience when you moved from Brazil to Germany?
It's very funny because in my first move here, I was living in Berlin and I was presenting my company to a German cast that we're checking, and they are very direct. They are really direct in their feedback on the way they speak. And I remember that the first feedback I received was like, "Man, your pitch sucks." And that was so embarrassing for me because I was like, "Well, you could at least be some gentle. You don't have to be so rushed. Why are you doing this?" So that was the first. I was like, okay, I'm in a very different place, and I need to understand how they behave, how they work, because they're not mean. They're not mean people. It's just how they learn to do. Uh, Another funny thing when I moved to Hamburg, I had my first day in the company here was Happy Car, and I arrived like 5 minutes late for the meeting, and that's normal in Brazil. It's really normal, and everybody was there, and everybody was angry, and everybody was looking to the watch and like, this is totally disrespectful the way you act. So also very different behavior. So yeah, it really depends on where you are. It's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah, when I moved to Germany at first, it's like a Brazil and Turkey, a bit similar in many different scales in culture analysis. And I also felt the same, like, but after 5 years, now I am punctual in meetings, for example. And like, we had a Brazil colleague, and he was late to meetings, and I realized that, okay, this needs to be said. And then I said, okay, here in Germany, you are new in Germany, we start sharp, like at the clock, so we don't run late. So this is like one thing that is mentioned, but it is also at the same time, we are talking about cultures, but this puts us in stereotypes, and it's something that I also personally try to escape, because at the end every person is unique, but still we have stereotypes. And like many like well-intentioned people believe that if they just focus on the personal ones and don't think about stereotypes, that they're gonna think they are gonna succeed. But it's not this way. What do you think about that?
I fully agree with you. And also in this new world, new era that we're living, we have a lot of influences. So when I was growing up, there was no internet, so I had no influence like from States or from German or from these cultures. I never saw it. Everything I learned was on school, on books, and now I see that the new generation, they are really having these influences. So to really judge only for the culture, it's not fair. And of course, you can learn. So my opinion about that is we really need to understand the best thing about every single culture, uh, and make use of that. in our favor. So what a Brazilian can bring good to the table and what an American can bring good to the table. What are our strengths? And then we can work on that and make something mixed. So I do not like to judge only for the culture, but of course you are influenced and you need to take in consideration before you say something.
Yeah, true. But also, like, yeah, everyone has the culture there, like their inside. So, and it's not something that you can put. So, in my opinion, you cannot say that someone's coming from Brazil, but you cannot say that they have the Brazilian stereotype because, for example, you came from Brazil, but you are living in Germany. It means that you have the German influence already. So, I am Turkish and I have this German influence in my blood. As we talked, like we said in the beginning, like I said, now I am punctual. I have my German blood, it's inside us. And also the cultures are relative. So people think that, for example, if you compare the British people and Germans are more punctual and they will be like on time. But if you compare the British with France, then like British people are more punctual. So that these things are coming. Like it's really differs from country to country, but it's also relative. So you cannot really say that they are punctual, they are not. But I want to talk about more about the communication. So there are two ends of communication, and I want to state in the beginning that we will talk about the ideas more in this book, this culture map from Erin Meyer, and I recommend everyone to definitely read this book. And what we are going to talk about the categories and the scales that is written in this book, and that's how we are going to shape this talk actually. And first scale is communication. And I want to ask your experience when you moved into Germany. That communication level is different. So what was your experience? Like, where did you think that, okay, this is way different than what I got used to?
I can really say, starting at Jimdo, where we work together, and our team was, when I first started, was very multicultural. So we had people from Netherlands, we had people from Germany, you from Turkey, Brazilians, and it was a shock for me because my first month managing the team, I did the one-to-ones and I asked everyone and each one of our team members, like, what is your expectations about Jimdo and where you think Jimdo are right now? And I got very different answers. And I had never read this book before, and you suggested me. And after reading this book, I understood that the answers was the same. They were just said in different ways. So it's really like, as we're saying, communication. Brazilians, we do not talk directly. So if I'm pissed on you, or if I'm angry, or if I do not agree with what you are talking about, I'm going to try to make this the most kind as possible. And you need to figure out that I'm not happy. So it's like when we're having a discussion, I'm saying, yeah, it's nothing. Yeah, I don't think that's the right way, but never very directly. So that was my first experience, like having people saying, yeah, this right now is not working at all. And people saying, this is working very well, but it's not. Or this could be better in just a little bit things. And no, it's a lot. So my first impression was really like, oh my God, how can I make everybody talk the same language? How can I make people understand each other? And I think you can say about this too, because you saw some conflicts inside the team happening because of that, because you have someone saying one thing, other person saying the same thing in different languages, and they were fighting. And they were fighting for the same thing. They were just not connecting. So I think you can also bring some ideas to that.
Yeah, that's true. Where you are coming from is actually like a high context. As you said, you say something, now I need to figure out. So this is called high context culture communication. And there's also on the one side, there's a low context culture communication, low context communication, and it is more like Americans are, for example, a good example of low context. I think they are at the end. So in one side, also we had, and in the team, like more, I think the Dutch people or Germans, a bit low context cultures. And in this low context, basically, how you approach the communication is you tell them what you're going to tell them in the beginning. And then you tell this to them. And then at the end, you just tell them what you have told them. So it's like a 1, 2, 3 steps. You're talking about the same thing. And that was also experienced, I got annoyed a bit. Like, why are you stating the obvious? It's like, why? I mean, we got it. Okay, you said 4 times. It's also okay. And yeah, so these two ends, and now we have one question. So like, this is a good question actually. What key skills besides language that you both picked when moving countries? So it's also related to that one. But before moving on to the next topic, I want to answer that question actually.
It's really, I think communication is the strongest one that you need to understand. But I will also say a little bit about cultural, like on the sense of historical culture, how the facts influence people. Like that's also something you need to understand, because sometimes you do not understand that you are being rude, you do not understand that you are being mean in things you say, or some jokes you are saying that for you is very common, for you is very normal, but for some people this might be very, very, very bad. So to really understand the concept and the scenario and where the people were like injected and how they react, it's also something very, very, very important. And bring it to you again, like to this low context versus high context. That's really interesting. That's really interesting and hard to understand. So when you are managing, let's say I want the team to build something for me, or I want the team to understand the importance of a project. If I'm talking to you or to a Brazilian, and again, not stereotyping, but if I'm talking to someone in a high context, you can understand this very easy. If I say, let's go and let's travel to Turkey, you know that we're going to probably get an airplane and we're going to get a ticket and we're going to go there. If I talk to a German and say, let's go to Turkey, they might come here in my place with a bicycle and say, okay, let's go. And I'm like, well, what are you doing with this bicycle? Yeah, don't tell me that we need to get a plane ticket or something. So that's the low context. You need to be very exact on the feedback. Or again, like if we're providing something that you do not like on the communication, not on the feedback yet, but you're not being direct, they do not understand. They really think you are not making a complaint or anything. So that's really, really, really tough. And probably you also have this on the other side, like when people from Brazilians are providing you something or having communication with you, very different than a German having a communication with you when they expect.
Yeah, I think I have one question, not to you, but to people who are watching or listening us, that what do you think when the most communication problems occur, like in between? So between low context culture or high context culture, like imagine two people, in which part that the most problems are occur? Because I had those problems and I want to ask people to think about it first. It's a tricky question because so I just want to give like 3 seconds so they can think. In which side do the problems occur most? Okay, so I had this problem with a Brazilian guy. So we both come from high context cultures. It is the place there where the most problems occur. We had a conflict because we both talk in a broader way. So we communicate in a high context. We say, okay, we both say we go to Turkey, but what we mean by, for example, he wants to go by train, but he never mentions, and I want to go by plane. Then you have the problem, And this is the place where the most problems occur. And I'm curious about, have you been in one of those? So did you experience one of these kind of cultural conflicts in the communication?
Yes, a lot. And that's funny because the most conflicts I have is with Brazilians that are the same as me. And this high context is, as they're saying, it's very hard because sometimes they are saying, yeah, I understood what you want, but they don't. Or they do understand like something completely different. And the result's not what we were expecting to be. And that's also something that when you go for a low context is important. Although like the feeling when a low context come to you and say, yeah, you need to do this, 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 and that. And now I'm going to write you an email explaining what I just said to you. And you're like, okay, I'm not as stupid. So you just got angry. But in the end, the results to what you were expecting. I had this issue back in my previous company that I said to the team, like, yeah, we have this deadline. and we need to fulfill this deadline. We need to achieve it. And they did achieve it, but with the wrong deliverable. Like it was a totally different software that I was expecting to have. And I was like, guys, it's impossible. Did you not understand what we should like work on? Like, yeah, we did. You spoke about this project at this date. I was like, no, there's a different discussion. So these kind of things, and you're right, like when you are both high context, we think you understood, but we didn't, and we do not confirm, and then things go wrong. So all my problems are really there.
Yeah, my experience or the key point is that at least like what I discovered on the way is that you cannot not communicate. So it is not an option. So doesn't matter where you are coming from. It is the one thing that we have to do. We have to communicate. There is no other way. And what I also found out in like mostly mixed cultural teams is that the low context communication works better. So when you explain everything to everyone, you don't only talk with the low context people, but also you close the gap between two different high context cultures because you explain to both of them. Yes, sometimes it's annoying. I understand because I'm also from one of the high context cultures, but it is the way it is. So we cannot not communicate, actually. It's not an option.
Yeah, and there's one thing also that I just remembered that's very interesting. I worked before working with like these startups and these innovation words. I worked my whole life as a consultant. And back in Brazil, it's very common after a meeting with your partner or with a company, a client or someone that you're offering your services. After every single meeting, you prepare a document with what you speak there. And these documents need to be signed for both sides. And that's normal, that's business there. And in my first work here in Germany, I did that to a German client. He said, man, are you crazy? We just spoke about that. Why I have to sign a document saying exactly what we spoke? And that's also about low context. Like the information is so clear during the meeting, you do not need to sign anything. It's clear, it was taught. But I was used to that in Brazil because we are both high context.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure that what I'm telling you, what I'm going to do is what I'm going to deliver to you in the end. That's also something funny, like
yeah.
Yeah.
This is one of the scales like related to like trusting. So in the book, there's also trusting scale. Is like at one side is the task-based cultures and the relationship-based cultures, and I believe in this case. So for example, in Germany, people are more task-based trust. So what they are doing is basically you give them a job or they give you a job and you do the job. And if you're doing the job very well, then they trust you. They trust you with your work. But in relationship-based cultures is that it's not like that. So you need to build this personal relationship with a person, then they can trust you. It is not related with it's not related with the task at all, anything. And Turkey is in the middle a bit. I would say more leaned into the relationship-based culture. And I assume that you have this in the relationship-based culture because you need to kind of document it, I assume, but I'm not sure. So also like in this case, Felipe, how do you trust people then, like in your own culture and when you compare with here?
In this particular example, like it's not a lot about trust, it's more about making sure that the understanding is right. Because if you offer some service and it's like the contract that the Germans like, or any country, you have to sign a contract, but you also create some artifacts that people need to understand what you are doing. So it's not really about trust, it's more about making sure that both are understanding the topic. And why this was like created is because we had a lot of issues in the past for this communication. But replying to trust, that's also very interesting. In Brazil, we say that the only way for you to create a connection with a customer or with your colleague at work is to go out, drink, and got drunk, and then speak bullshit. It sounds very unprofessional when you talk with Germans about this. Germans, they do not have this relation, like after work, or you could never give your cell phone to your colleague because he's your colleague. In Brazil, they call you at midnight.
Yeah, same in Turkey. Yeah.
So this trust is really like on the personal level. If I work with someone, I need to have like lunch or to spend time knowing about their family, knowing about their issues, knowing about their life. And that's also very different. People like from this low context are more reserved, so you do not know a lot about them.
Yeah, one experience I had like I don't know 2 weeks ago or so, or maybe a couple of weeks more, and we have one German colleague, and I'm doing these talks every Tuesday, and every Tuesday I told the team that I'm doing this, and he asked me, "How do you find people to invite?" And I said, "I have a lot of friends," and he said, "Really?" He said, I don't have any friends like that I can talk in engineering terms, you know." And I thought about it afterwards, and I said, "Okay, I built these relationships within years. They are my friends. So whoever I invited here, I consider as a friend, not something like a colleague only, you know." But in the task-based cultures, it's basically a colleague, and that was really hard when I moved to Germany, because as an expat, you want to meet with new people, and in Germany, it's freaking hard because they consider you as a colleague, not a friend, and you want to go out, like get to know them, make some new friendships, and etc. But it is not really possible. So, and in Hamburg, it is way harder than Berlin, for example, in Germany.
Yeah.
Berlin is more international. Well, how was your experience like when you moved in then?
I will just come back one before that's
Sure.
funnier. So when I was 20 years old, I moved to States for a project. So I stayed like more than 8 months working there. And in our first day, we are four Brazilians. And our first day at the company, they said, "Yeah, you should come like at 8 in the morning. We start working. Midday, we go to lunch. And 5 p.m., everybody go home." Was our first day, our first day. And nobody invited us for lunch. Like they just stand up, go lunch for themselves, and no one said, "Hey, do you want to have lunch with me?" And that's so impolite for Brazilians. Like it's so impolite. And we're like, "Man, we're totally in the wrong place." That's so weird. That was the first one that was a shock for me. And the second one, I was talking to one colleague, and like this, we worked together for more than 6 months. So I thought we had a personal relation. And I told him, "Man, my dream was really to go like to a Thanksgiving dinner, so I can sit with a real American family and have
Yeah.
Thanksgiving in their place." And if you say that, probably in Turkey is the same, but if you say that to a Brazilian, is going to say, "Man, come with
Yeah,
me, go to my
exactly.
place." He turned to me and said, "Yeah, that's going to be very hard," and just left. I was like, "Man, what's wrong with these people?" So this is really, again, it's cultural. So you do not have this real personal bond.
Yeah.
It's work, and after work, it's done. And German was the same.
Yeah.
German's really the same. Like when I first arrived, in Berlin, of course, is different because you
Yeah.
have more, as you said, people are more used to that. But in Hamburg, like the people who work with me, I was lucky because I had a lot of Brazilians in the
Hmm.
company, so it's not so hard, let's say, to have some after work. But the non-Brazilians, the Germans, they're really like, "Okay, bye, see you tomorrow." Nobody invite me to visit the city or show me anything. They're really like, "Yeah, go by yourself. You can go to these places," and that's what I recommend to you. But again, it's how they behave.
Yeah, it is. It's not something that is blaming. It is more like it's the culture. So it's totally different. And being aware of these things, like, and the creating the awareness, and also like maybe changing the expectations is the key here, because we need to build trust, and because it's an insurance basically, so it's an investment we make for the future, because you never know when you're going to need the trust. It's literally an insurance, and either it's a task-based culture or relationship-based culture, it doesn't matter. So we need to build those things.
Yeah, we need to find a way, because
Yeah.
we are saying, of course, because both of us, we are in this the same cultural side, but for the other people, it's also embarrassing. I can imagine like how embarrassed these Americans got when I said, I would love to go to your place to have dinner. That's
Yeah.
so impolite. It's so impolite. And I did that.
Yeah.
So the other part also should understand like that where we are coming from. And then we got this yeah, Brazilians, they are very intrusive. So they really try to enter our place or uh, and to understand where we are, it's very important. And this trust building. We need to see like the whole team and how we can make it easier for everyone.
Yeah, this brings me to like the point of so giving feedback. So it's really critical, but when we face those situations, we need to be able to give the feedback and to make the communication and also the relationship easier to understand each other better. And this is one thing I also struggled in the beginning because in Turkey, it's totally different from Germany, of course. And in the giving feedback, there are two kinds of feedback actually. So one is the indirect feedback that you give, indirect negative feedback, and the other one is direct negative feedback. And one thing is really clear that everyone wants the constructive criticism. So in all cultures, everyone agrees to give the constructive criticism. But what is considered as a constructive is different for cultures. So, for example, that's a one good example in the book. It says that Dutch people can give feedback to their boss, like maybe CEO directly, in an open group, like with, I don't know, with a all hands meeting with 200 people are joining. They can just say, no, you don't, you are wrong. You need to make this like this, etc. But try this in Japan, so then you will see a lot of problems. Well, did you experience like something like this, like giving feedback? I'm sure you did, but can you tell us about a bit your experience?
Yeah, actually yes. And I would say that Brazil, we are kind of close to Japan on this because it's not normal to give feedbacks to your boss in front of everyone. It's also considered impolite, and if you do that, your boss is going to be really angry with you, and the team members are going to be like, "Oh my God, what this person is doing? Like, he's nuts." Uh, so for me, it was also a shock because, as you were saying, like in Jimdo, the feedback culture in Jimdo, it's very open, so it's nice. But in the first place, to receive this feedback, like what you are doing is wrong, you should improve this, you should improve that, is something that I never had. I never had this. So back in Brazil, what I used to say was the law. Even if I was wrong, nobody would come to me and say, "Hey, I think you should do this different," or "I think you should do that different."
As a
And
boss,
when
right?
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and when we fail, it's on me. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
but he asked me to do that. I was like, okay, but if you knew that this is gonna not work, why didn't say me? Yeah, because you're my boss. So if you're saying that I need to go there, that's the point. And coming to Germany is to receive the feedback, something that I think it's very different and it's very good. To give feedback, actually, this book helped me a lot, because I realized that after reading it, I prepare every single feedback for the specific culture, and then it makes sense. So as you were saying, like Americans, they like to receive good feedback in the beginning, and then you can criticize. Brazilians, they need to go very good, like the whole path. Even when they're giving bad feedback, you need to do in a good way. Like maybe next time you should do this better. When they're really saying, "Yeah, this is terrible. Never do that again." And the Brazilian will understand you that you are saying that. For Dutch people, you need to be very strong. Like this is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. They don't have this need to hear that they are very good because they know what they are being good or not. And so you really need to prepare yourself, understand who you are talking to before you proceed. The real challenge is big groups, how you can make this work in big groups. And that's something we are still struggling. I mean, we and you are working together on this, but it's something we need to figure out how to do.
So there's also one side of the feedback is that's one thing I found interesting is sometimes you don't mention bad things, right? So you just say the good, and you don't say the bad part. You just leave it there. So you say, okay, these were really good, and then stop. And some people, like in indirect negative feedback culture, they will understand that they did those ones really good. But when we don't mention those ones, they will understand that, okay, these parts that, for example, John Doe didn't mention, so that means that I didn't do a good job there. This is very different in my culture, because also we have the boss say something, then you go and you don't give feedback directly to your boss. And also related to that one is the cultures use some different words, and like upgrader words or downgrader words. For example, in I think in direct negative feedback culture, like in Americans, for example, they use more upgraders. So it's like saying, "Oh, it's amazing. Everything is a bit exaggerated." Let's say, not exaggeration, but it's more upgrading. So whatever they say, they upgrade it. And in indirect negative feedback cultures, it is more like a downgrader. So it's like, yeah, this one is a bit, you need to maybe work on it, but you know that it is absolutely wrong. Like they need to change 100%, but you don't say it. This is, I try to pick some words, like when I try to listen to feedback, not to give at the same time, but also listen. I pick those words. So do you know, like, for example, in your culture, how do you approach these things? And also you work with Americans as well. So how was this different for you?
Yeah, as you said, and to receive the feedback, it's like you really need to understand. And I had a very bad experiences with my American bosses before reading this book. And understand that why they are doing that, because again, like as you are saying, they use this what you are doing is amazing. This what you are doing is incredible. You are an essential person for this team. You are not gonna have a salary raise this year. So why? If I'm doing everything good, if I'm an amazing person, if I'm the best in the department, why I'm not gonna have a salary raise? And that's the way they do feedback. Like you are doing a good job.
I think I heard in one podcast that they call it a shit sandwich. I don't know whose term is it in the American feedback, but it's a quite funny term for me.
Yeah, exactly. And you were like, well, okay, so what I did wrong? If you're saying that I just did the good thing, like where's the problem? Why I'm not gonna get something? And in Brazil is very different. In Brazil, like it's everything under the line. So you need to pick up the feedback. But when something really bad happens, then we are very direct. So we don't measure words. There was a guy who worked with us at Jindo, and he said, like, yeah, I miss Brazil because in Brazil you punch the table and you fight a lot during the meeting, and then everybody go out and have a beer in the end of the day. So that's also true there. When things are really, really bad, we are very direct. So we don't measure words. And just bringing to this feedback thing too, one thing that's important, English is not my mother language, neither yours.
Yeah.
So to give or to receive feedback in a language that's not your mother tongue, it's very hard too. Because sometimes you are getting some words that doesn't make a lot of sense to you, or you are trying to find the word before find the message, and that makes very confusing the way of providing feedback. And I know that with the Brazilians in the team, it's easier for me. So when I go and say in Portuguese, they understand better than sometimes the Germans when I have to translate and they have to translate. And then we got this communication problems in the middle. So that's also interesting.
Yeah. So this, like when you said when Brazilians are angry, they will just punch the table. It reminds me the disagreeing part as well, because that's totally different, because you can be in a indirect negative feedback side, so you cannot give this feedback properly. Not properly, but you give it indirectly. But you can be very confrontational. So you can say, no, that is wrong. And at that point, I think there are like more cultures like this, but disagreeing side is a bit more tricky. Like this is where everything is mixed up actually. So why being aware of these kind of differences are good, because we can separate at the end is disagreeing. For example, in Brazil, it's an indirect feedback culture, but you are confrontational culture. You grow up in that culture. When there's something wrong, you say it, but at the end, not in the middle. And it's also different. And so the case is in disagreeing part is separating someone's opinions from the person expressing the opinion. So it's like if we can separate those opinions with person, then it is like more confrontational, I would say. And on the other hand, when groups are working in harmony, in like reading the air, mostly trying to understand, they avoid the confrontation. So it means more as a whole team gathering, like doing something. And so how do you think we can effectively manage this disagreeing in multicultural teams? What do you think? Do you have an experience?
Yeah, and this is very hard. This is actually very hard. I had a case like where I was talking with a guy from Armenia and a German manager, and I was in the middle. And basically, the Armenian guy was saying, "Yeah, I think that's the best solution that we need to go because A, B, C." And the German was saying, "No, I do not agree." And he was saying, "Okay, so why you do not agree?" "Yeah, I do not agree because you didn't prove me right. I need more evidence." And he was like, "So you need to give me evidence that what I'm telling you doesn't work." And the German was like, "No, you need to give me more evidence that works." And I was like, "Oh my God, how?" So it's really like this kind of conflict, and then become personal. Like, yeah, this guy's an asshole. Yeah, this guy's an asshole. And it's not. We're just trying to give the same explanation, but you are not being able to manage some solution. I think the most important part on this one is to have a close manager that we need to pay attention to the small details. Because as you said, to become personal, it's very easy. So you need to really pay attention on Slack messages if you're using Slack or any communication software. You need to pay attention on the meetings. If there anything that, I don't know, one person say and the other one do not take it very right, and you know that he's angry, but he's not going to say. So things like that, the manager needs to pay attention in the moment until we can be able to build some team that has this trust that they can speak openly. But it's a very, very hard challenge, specifically in this remote world where we are looking each other through the computer. So when we are in a meeting, we really need to be paying attention and people reaction. As a manager, it's a very huge challenge. So
yeah,
I don't know how your experience on that, but mine, like I can say, a lot of conflicts that I was able to avoid just looking to the camera and making the communication after the meeting on an offline environment.
Yeah, one trick generally is what I found other people are using is basically putting a bit like a touch of humor into the talk. And sometimes it works when you say, "Let me play devil's advocate." Like you're saying basically opening the line, saying, "Okay, I'm not being an asshole, but I just want to say that I want to play the devil's advocate to make this conversation better." This one, I saw it's working in mixed cultures. And also, as you said, as a manager, you need to keep the emotions in the equation. So you need to keep focusing on small details, small emotions, maybe the gestures on the face, on the camera, some they are doing. It's freaking hard in the remote setup because you don't really understand how their face is doing. Sometimes their camera is closed, for example, so you cannot really see how they do it. But yeah, sometimes you need to understand, and it is very, very hard.
Yeah.
And sorry, and but so okay, I want to go with the deciding part because deciding is another tricky thing while managing the teams. There are two sides of the deciding scale. One is consensual. Basically, you get like you do it everyone together, like to convince everyone and etc. And another one is top-down approach. So boss comes in, says, "Okay, we're gonna do this," and everyone goes with that. Since you made the change from top-down culture, like as you said, there's a decision from the boss and then everyone goes with it, to consensual, more Germany. What was your experience when deciding? Because you are the manager, you make the decision. In personal, you need to change yourself to adapt to German culture, let's say. How was your experience? Where was the really hard part?
Everything, everything. To be honest, everything. Not at Jimdo, because at Jimdo I was here from long time, so it was not so hard to be part. But in the first place, when I come from Brazil, like my last company, everything I used to say, as I told you, people used to do. So it was the only and final word. Although I was open, so of course I brought everyone to the room and I said, "Hey, give me ideas or prove me wrong. Let's have a discussion." And we had these conversations, and of course I changed my mind. I was not a dictator, but the final decision was mine. I was able to come to the team and say, "Hey, team, we're gonna do this. I know that's the best way, but right now we need to do this way." And then I come to Germany. I was trying to do these things, and the answer was no. We are not gonna do it. If we do not believe in that, we're not gonna do it. I was like, oh my God, but back in Brazil, if you try to do this thing, everybody, including myself, would be fired. You because you're not doing, and me because I'm a bad manager. So if I can't convince my team that we need to go for this direction, so I suck as a manager. And that's the Brazilian way of seeing. So that was my first struggling part. How can I convince people that what I'm trying to show or why I'm trying to show is the right way to do? But it's a skill that you can learn. So of course you just need to show it, like the benefits and show the big picture on the end. At Gino, the struggling really is the multicultural, because just this example, if you go for a German, you really need to bring data. You need to bring, like, to show why the project's gonna work, where we are trying to go, what are all the steps. You need to make a very big plan, and then they are gonna buy and they are gonna join you. For a Brazilian, this is like waste of time. So while you are working on the German way, the Brazilians are pissed. And they're saying, guys, we need to move, we need to go, I'm angry. And then they make so much noise in the team that the Germans start getting pissed, and then you just have conflict. So the challenge is, how can we go in the midterm? And sometimes you need to give some top-down decisions in this environment. Although it's very open and you go to consensus, at some specific moments you need to say, we are gonna do this, so you can make these people busy and you can have a planning through that people. And when you create the perfect mix team, that's what I'm trying to do right now, for example. Everybody's happy because everybody's working and seeing things moving. So we need, of course, you need to open a little bit sometimes. That's the management work. You need to see how you can flexibilize things. I don't know if this word exists, but you need to make flexible, like how to do it.
To make one thing clear, that there are some comments, but the top-down decisions are, so there's a decision point in both styles. So it's totally different. And in consensual decisions, basically, it takes a lot of time. You talk with everyone, you get everyone on board. But once the decision is made, it's done. So like there's no more discussion. You go to the implementation phase. But in top-down decisions are made quickly, generally by one person, but each decision is flexible. So there's a decision point really early on, but you start challenging the decisions later on. And there is no right or perfect way. So in every workplace, let's say, every company, every culture has their own way, and they go with either top-down or consensual. So there is no only one way to have the better, perfect company. But one thing is suggested in the book is the strategy for multicultural teams is basically explicitly discussing and agreeing, and in the first place, which decision-making method you are going to use in this collaboration. So for example, if you say in the beginning, okay, people, okay, folks, gather up. From now on, we are using consensual decision-making. And we know it will take more time, but once we make the decision, we will not change it really afterwards, or the other way around. So this strategy is suggested in book, and I saw with my eyes that is working.
Yeah,
Jimdo, in my current job, I saw it's working. It's magic because when you say people say that, okay, this is what we are gonna do, and everyone agrees, it's working. If you don't talk about it at all, then it's a mess, complete
yeah,
mess.
yeah. And also it's very important to say that we live a modern economy, and before the manager, he was the most experienced person in that specific subject. That's why top-down decisions were made. Because I was working, let's look at Jimdo, for example. I would be working for 12 years at Jimdo. I would know everything that Jimdo is doing, and my decision would be more efficient than yours because the business is very specific.
Yeah.
Right now, that's not the truth. Right now, my job is to make sure that you, as a great engineer and better engineer than me, because you are more there, you are studying more, you have more information than I do. My work is to make your work easier. So we have different kind of work. So this decision, of course, they need to be in the team, but the strategical vision, where we are going, where we have to go, this needs to be on the manager. Because the team, I mean, of course, the team can influence on that, but
Yeah.
I need to bring you data to show, guys, that's what, folks, that's what we have to do. That's what we need to think. Give me solutions to achieve this point. That's where the top-down versus consensus are mixed. If you, Pastor, we work at Jimdo, if you come to me and say, hey, right now I want to start building, I don't know, wood, or I want to start building something, Netflix, that's not Jimdo. That's a different company. So you can't do that. You need to focus on this. That's where the top-down decisions come. I need to give you the vision. You need to give me how. So, and if you play the roles, if you agree how it's going to go, then the team can decide. And just to bring the other thing to you, that's also important to discuss. It's very hard to get a consensus in very huge teams.
Yeah.
That's why you need to have smaller. Because if you go like 20 people trying to decide something, it's not going to work. It's just imagine like a family trip with all your family and cousins and uncles trying to decide where we're going to go or where we're going to eat.
It's impossible. I mean, it doesn't matter a trip. We cannot make a decision to go to a restaurant even. It's like, at what time, which day? I don't know. Like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, this. Oh, now it reminds me the time thingy, but yeah, with teams it is very very different. But yeah, be like a communicate. As I said in the beginning, you cannot not communicate. So it's not an option. You have to say, you have to talk about this. You have to agree upon like saying that, okay, this is what we are gonna do. And I totally agree with you that some strategic decision has to come from top down, even though I like things going bottom up generally. There has to be a middle line, I would say. We are coming to an end slowly, but one thing I want to talk, we slowly mentioned in the beginning, is the time flexibility between different cultures. So like we talked about saying that you were like being 5 minutes late to the meeting and people were really angry. So why I want to talk about this time is because that's what I had experienced as like when I moved here. Germans are really punctual. Like all trains are, I don't know, the train is leaving at 13:03. You know, if you are in there 13:04, then you miss your train. It's like 1 minute and you miss. But it's more about the perception. And what I want to talk about this is the in punctual cultures, it's called linear time cultures. They are okay. Let's say from the like flexible cultures are more the relationships are more priority in flexible cultures, because when you put the relationship in front of the clock, basically, that means that the clock can be flexible, not your relationship. And this was really mixed for me. And you slowly mentioned, but I want to close with this one a bit more. And how was your experience, like when you moved to Germany from, like you said, in America you had some experience, but how was it in Germany, like in daily life as well and leading?
Yeah, like you really need to see, as you said, like it's important to understand that it's not only about time. So it's not only about like being on time or respecting time. This is what you said, the train goes at the time and the traffic is not so intense. Your life, Germans like or Europeans in general, their life is very on time because things work. If you go to Brazil, if you go to São Paulo, I used to live like 5 kilometers from my office, my apartment to my office. And some days took me 3 hours to get to the office, 5 kilometers. And I couldn't go by foot or by public transportation or by bicycle because I would die. Like it's basically crazy.
I know what
The
you mean.
traffic is insane. So that's how I was raised. And in my school, when I was young, I had 3 opportunities to join the class. I could join like 10 minutes late, nothing would happen. 30 minutes late, I lost the first class and I could join the second. And 1 hour late, my father would got like a note that I was totally late. So that's how I was raised. So for me to get late like 5 minutes, 10 minutes is not disrespectful at all. And this changed when I come to Germany because things work. So if you have a meeting at 8, you can wake up like at 7, take a shower and go. And you are going to be there at 8. You can plan yourself very easily. In Brazil, if you need to get at 8, you need to see first where you're going, the traffic conditions, and probably you need to wake up like at 5 and be there at 7. So you need to stay 1 hour waiting. We are used to that. That was my the biggest like conflict, internally conflict, because I'm okay. So I never apologize for like getting late in a meeting until you understand that really make people angry. And also the second part is the end of the meeting, because here like the meeting is scheduled to end at 4. At 4 people leave. In Brazil, if
Yeah.
it's ended at 4 and we need to postpone or we need to keep talking, we go until the end. We don't care to get time from the other meeting. That was also a very challenging thing for me, like how I can respect. And I learned now, as you said, like I feel I'm much more German than Brazilian on this time part. So if we have an agreement, I'm gonna be there. But it was very difficult for me, like to not relate these, like just tell people, hey, I'm Brazilian. That's why I'm doing that.
Sometimes it's like I try to use that one as an excuse of some things. Like I say, I'm Turkish, so who cares? But it's rarely worked, by the way. Yeah. Also, like with the times. So I'm considering like Turkey. Sometimes we don't even have a time. So like people say, yeah, let's meet after lunch. I mean, what time is lunch? You never know. It's like is it like 12 or is it 1? But you somehow at the end agree on some points. Some people are late. But I was always feeling weird in Turkey because I was most of the time I was on time there, even though the infrastructure was different. And that was my case or experience in Istanbul as well. I was exactly living 5 kilometers away from my work. But yeah, I tried walking once, by the way. It was there was like a freaking traffic, and I said, okay, now I'm gonna walk. I'm gonna try. It worked, but I was not expecting that it's gonna work. But yeah, so okay, we are coming to an end. I wanna ask like or the summarize the strategies we talked about for multicultural or mixed culture teams. So you wanna go? What are your general strategies for mixed culture teams?
Right now, again, that's also a very funny thing because I did a lot of this strategical before not knowing, and I wasn't aware that why things were working. It was just kind of intuition. But right now, with this concept and the book, first thing is understand which people are on my team. So trying to figure out where they come from, what are the influences, and as we did on our workshop, it's not only like I was born you are a Turkish per guy, but you live in Germany, so you have these both cultures. You really need to understand like all of the influences that they had. First thing, note and see where they come from. Second thing, one-to-one with every single one of the team members to really see if what I'm thinking about the culture is right. And we can extract that on a one-to-one conversation. We can make some questions that are going to force people to talk. And then you can map. And third one, like to create a strategy, talk to everyone and make sure that everyone agrees with this strategy. And then we need to interact. That's the most important part. It's not because we are saying that's the way we're going to go that we need to keep going this direction all the time. We need to see if it's working. We need to see if someone is not feeling so comfortable, and then we need to change or adapt. That's the way I'm working. So I need to understand the best way for everyone and explain if something is different or they need to adapt, why, and what's the big picture for the team.
Yeah. So I'm gonna like take a look at my notes and just say that if you're in multicultural teams, then as suggested in the book, then just go with, for example, low context processes, not the communication, but make your processes as low context as possible. So then you will not face any problems. And also like put it into writing. So when I realized also in my experiences, whenever we talked, we forgot. Whenever we wrote, then we had a thing that we can always refer to. And also like having a clear discussion about how you schedule the team meetings, for example, saying that, okay, the team meeting is at 10, but we start sharp, like at 10. So we don't wait people. Then have this clear in the beginning, then afterwards it a bit shapes around the team culture. That's also okay. So you wait people for a couple minutes. That's also okay. And for disagreeing, like playing devil's advocate is always, it seems like it's always working. I tried this and we tried at work from different groups, and I think it's working. And describe what you are doing and why, this is especially important, is one other good strategy, I would say. And basically at the end, I would say being mindful, like what we talked about, I don't know how many topics, like 5, 6 different topics, and being mindful about those things already is a step forward of doing these things. And as you said, like don't assume each person is a stereotype, and don't say or don't assume that each person is unique. They have similarities, they have differences.
Yes.
Okay, Felipe, I think we are at the end. Do you have anything else to add?
No, just like very, very nice conversation. I think that it's for people who are watching, they should read this book.
Yeah.
And I'm becoming that old lady that always recommend books to the students, that old teacher that read this book. But this one is really nice and it's completely mind-blowing. And I recommended it to some engineering managers at Jimdo, and they are all reading, and they are also, it's nice now to have these discussions when we are discussing and they are saying, yeah, it's you are low context, I'm high context, I'm behaving like German, I'm behaving like Brazilian. So we are able to connect on this. So I think it's a very nice one to read and to understand. As we're saying, other people, they are not mean. It's just the way they were raised. It's just the way they learn how to do things. So I would say that's my advice for you.
Yeah, exactly. So people who are watching or listening us, The Culture Map from Erin Meyer is the book that we talked about most of the time. And I also recommend this to everyone, literally everyone. It doesn't matter you are in an engineering team or in any other team. If you're working with people in international level from different cultures, or if you want to work with people from different cultures, you have to read. This is a mind-blowing book that is like, I think I've read it 2 times, but I'm going to keep reading it again and again. And I think, yeah, everyone should read this book. I cannot say more. And also, okay, thanks, Felipe, for being here. And how people can reach you, actually?
They can go to my LinkedIn. So I think you can share in the
Yeah, I will share on the
channel.
links.
And yeah, I always reply. Just add me. And
okay, yeah. Thanks everyone for being with us today. It was really nice talk and I really enjoyed. Thanks, Felipe, for being here. And it was really pleasure to talking with you. And I think we will see each other again in this talk, hopefully later on. But thanks a lot for joining.
hope so. Thanks again, and very, very congratulations for this work. It's pretty amazing.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Okay, bye-bye. See you next week.
Bye.